Hello, guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Skills and Abilities. I do believe this is the last skill on the Paladin tree, so we're going to be moving on to another class after this. I'm not exactly sure how many of these abilities I have left to do, but I figured let's finish the Paladin. Paladin's one of my favorite characters anyway, so why not? So what are we going to be doing today? Well, we're going to be doing Charge. Charge is the last skill on the list, and it's definitely an interesting one, and it has a lot of mechanics that we need to go over. First off, what is Charge as an ability? Well, it's a very big single target damage hit. It does a lot of damage in one bonk. One big giant bonk. It's actually very useful to have a knockback with this particular ability, and we'll talk about why. But it actually pairs very well with Smite if you want to alternate between Smite for the knockback and Charge for the hit. So you basically just go Smite, Charge, Smite, Charge, Smite, Charge, Smite, Charge, Smite, Charge. Now, why is this the case? Well, Charge actually doesn't dish out damage if the monster is within melee range. So a lot of people don't know this about the Charge ability, and it's kind of an oddity, is that basically you have to not be in melee range to get optimal damage from the ability. So let's go ahead and build Might. We're going to go ahead and throw the Might aura on. We're going to throw on our Charge aura, and I'm going to kind of show you what I mean. So let's grab our shield as well. Bink, bink. Speaking of shields, let's talk about that for a second. So when you are charging, it doesn't technically count as running, but it also doesn't technically count as walking. You do not lose your defense, but your block chance is capped to 25% while charging. So there's kind of an interesting thing there. It's not quite the same as running, because when you're running, you lose all of your defense, and you don't get anything in return. Whereas when you are charging, you don't lose your defense, but your block chance does get capped at 25% the same way it does when you're running. So you're still pretty tanky while charging. You're just not as tanky as you would be while you were walking. So let's go to Darkwood. Why not? We can charge around here, and we'll talk about the various ways that this particular ability works. So first off, when you charge and hit a monster, the monster is going to take a pretty significant amount of damage. All right? But if you hold down the button, what's going to happen is you're going to attack like this. All right? This is not charging. You do not get the damage bonus, and you do not get the AR bonus when you are utilizing the ability in this way. So if you're standing next to a target and you attack the target like this, you are not getting the damage bonus. You are not getting the AR. To get the damage bonus in the AR, you have to charge the target from outside of melee range. This is very important. This means that to get the actual damage bonus, the monster has to not be next to you. Which is why Knockback comes into play with this particular ability, because you want the target to be knocked away from you. Another interesting way that you can utilize this is with Smite. So if you're having trouble getting a monster to get knocked away from you, you can smite them away from you and then charge to them. One of the best ways to use this ability is simply to run away and charge back to the monster once you are outside of melee range. So if you don't actually have a knockback ability, you want to actually run away and charge back. Run away and charge back. Run away and charge back. Over and over again until you can kill them. Now, if you can knock them back, you don't have to do this. So it's very important to note that if you are able to knock them back with each successive hit, it actually does enable you to continually attack the same target with charge repeatedly. So for instance, in this particular case, I can knock the target back multiple times and dish out multiple hits of charge while knocking them away from me. And Charge is kind of odd in this way, because it's one of the few melee abilities that you do want to have a knockback effect for. But Charge is not only about its knockback. Another thing that Charge is exceedingly good for is movement speed. So you can utilize Charge simply to move very fast. It's basically the equivalent of about 225% faster run walk on a character. And when you charge, what you want to do is you just want to click once. You want to hold the shift key and click once. This is going to charge you in the direction that you're trying to go. You don't want to hold down the button. If you hold down the button, it's going to end up in a lot of mana cost. As you can see, it's just draining my mana into oblivion, which is definitely not what you want. Also, it can occasionally end up in a bug where your character gets locked in position. So you don't want to overutilize it too much in that way. Instead, what you want to do is you want to just shift, 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 and you just click occasionally here and there to make your character run really fast. You don't have to hold down the button to get the best effect out of it. Also, it costs the same amount of mana if you click here as if you click here. So when you're charging for movement, you want to make sure that you're utilizing charge at its maximum distance so that you're not spending a huge amount of mana on the ability. Yes, it's still going to cost you a pretty significant amount of mana to charge around, but nowhere near as much as if you utilize it like this, which is going to burn your mana into oblivion extremely fast. You can be slowed when you are charging, so it's important to note that there are effects like slows target, decrepify, chilling effects that can slow down your movement speed while you are charging. And it can make you go extremely slow. This is unfortunate because it does mean that sometimes the ability ends up being rather useless if you don't have, for instance, Canopy Frozen. And you end up getting hit by, some nasty curses and things like that. But as you can see, it tends to have some pretty good damage output. With a one-handed weapon, which is a pretty decent one-handed weapon, but it's still a one-handed weapon, I'm dishing out 5,200 to 6,826. Now this, of course, is doubled by things like Deadly Strike, which is definitely very nice. Charge can also apply Open Wounds. It can also apply Crushing Blow. So you can get some pretty nice effectiveness out of the ability in this way. But unfortunately, because you actually have to back up and charge into enemies that are not knocked back, it does make it a little bit difficult to get optimal damage output on certain monsters. As far as I know, I don't think you can knock back size 3 monsters, although we can always go check that out right now.
Not here.
It's too bad you can't charge in town. That'd be nice. Why do I have Thorns Aura on? What the hell's going on? I don't even have Thorns. I don't even have the skill Thorns. I don't even have any abilities that give Thorns. What the hell's going on there? I don't even know where the Thorns Aura is coming from. But it is definitely on me, which is really strange. Seems like a bug. Size 3 monsters. River of Flame should be a good place for size 3 monsters. So these are size 3 monsters. They're Pit Lords. Let's see if we can knock a Pit Lord back. Looks like we can knock the Pit Lord back with size 3. So it doesn't seem like size 3 monsters are unaffected by the knockback of this particular ability. So it looks like we can still get pretty nice charge damage on these guys. It is a little wonky to use, though. So what happens is that you can't dish out the full charge damage unless you actually hit the target from range, right? Well, sometimes what happens is a monster will be standing in front of another monster. And even though you knock the monster back, he doesn't go anywhere because, of course, he hits his allies that are behind him. Kind of like he gets caught by them, so to speak. This means that you're not going to be able to knock them back if they have a lot of monsters around them, which unfortunately means that the more monsters there are in a particular battle, the less likely you are to be able to knock back that monster and have the continuous charge streak, which is definitely what you want if you're trying to use the charge ability. Because the more times that you can continuously use charge in a row, the better the damage output will be. However, even if you manage to get off every single charge attack in sequence, with a knockback on every single charge, you're looking at about the same attack speed as a regular attack. So just walking up to a monster and just regular attacking them. But the damage output of charge, of course, is way better than a regular attack. With 1,750 damage increase at level 35 with synergies, you're going to hit something really hard. You can, of course, increase that even more by utilizing items like, say, Fortitude, a Phoenix Shield, and so forth and so on. And I believe I do actually have a Phoenix shield right here. Let's play around with this real quick. So here is a Grief. Now, Grief is not going to be the optimal weapon for this particular build, because two-handed weapons tend to do more damage than Grief does in this particular setup. But let's just test this real quick with the Grief and the Fortitude instead of the Astrions and the ladder. So let's go ahead and grab our Dujinks here, max out Charge, max out Might, max out Vigor, and we should have our maxed Dujink here. Of course, we lost a couple skill points, unfortunately, but nothing we can do about that. But we do have our Phoenix on. I don't think I have a Fortitude sitting in here, but I might have a Chains of Honor, which does offer a 200% damage bonus to demons, which is pretty close to what Fortitude offers. So we should be looking at a similar damage output for the demons. And let's go ahead and try that on one of these demons now. And we charge. And of course we're stuck in a corner. Nobody puts baby in a corner. I'm not exactly entirely sure it's doing better. Although these monsters are immune to physical. Let's find some more monsters. Let's go kill Shank real quick, or Eldritch. As you can see, once you get them in a charge string like this, it actually works pretty good to kill monsters. Now, one of the biggest uses of charge is not PvM. It's actually PvP. So charge is a actually really effective PvP skill. Not only does it offer significant damage output, it's also a very good mobility ability, which helps you get around the battlefield. And it also just freaking... It's kind of ridiculous when it comes to the amount of damage that you can put out with a single hit. I don't know exactly what the upper limit is on charge, but I would imagine that charge could probably one-shot a player relatively easily, depending on gear, you know, abilities, things like that. I think the most important thing probably with charge in PvP is trying to stay alive while you're charging, because you can still be hit, of course, while you're charging around. Does make things a little more complicated. Even if charge, you know, is used for PvP mainly, it's still a very fun skill to run around on PvE with and have some fun. It does make for some very beautiful damage output in terms of its single target capability. Now, granted, Grief doesn't actually show off how much damage it does, but if I were to throw on Astrions instead, you could see here that I'm sitting on a 7.8k hit right now, with a pretty good chance to double Dudley Strike, which means double that. So I'm looking at like anywhere between like 16,000 damage right now for a single charge strike, which is pretty nice, to be honest. Anyway, as always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, even when we're talking about charge. And as always, keep watching.